speaking of more power, let's talk about Professor Jay Bhattacharya, one of the co-authors of the Great Barrington Declaration. Firstly, he's had quite a rough ride in the media over the past couple of years. So I'm guessing he's a fairly guarded person. What's he like to interview, Nick?
Well, he's terrific. And the funny thing is, Fred, the first time I've had a chance to talk to him one-on-one, but I feel that I've been in on a conversation that he's been involved in for the last 2 years, just simply for this wonderful world of podcasts and blogs and everything. You know, I've been following what he's been saying from the beginning because it always seemed like common sense, right? His basic point is this: don't lock down the entire population. What's the point? Like most people, by the vast majority of people in Australia, very low, if zero risk of dying from COVID under normal circumstances. But of course, there's people, largely the elderly, the people with comorbidities, overweight people, for instance, smokers, for instance, but other things like people with cancer, they are vulnerable. So you look after them, right? It's just always from day one seemed to me common sense. And I wrote about this at the time and got sort of blank stares, you know. But that's all he argued. That's what the Great Barrington Declaration was. You know, let's not lock down everybody. Let's just lock down those who are at risk and the rest of us get on with our lives. And the result of that, and this was a declaration which was signed not just by Dr. Bhattacharya, but two other really prominent immunologists, people who know what they're talking about, was that they came under the sustained attack from Anthony Fauci and the American government. And we're now seeing, through emails that have been released through Freedom of Information, and others which may be released by the end of this month, actually under a court order because they're taking court action against Fauci and others, that show this was collusion, that Fauci and others actually conspired to attack these people's reputation and bring them down, and involved social media in that. So they had direct communication with social media bosses. We need to bring these people down because they're dangerous. Dangerous? All they were doing in October 2020 was just arguing, well, look, there's another way to do this, fellas. You know, you don't have to lock the entire population down. So, you know, I think he is being vindicated by what's happened since. I mean, it's widely appreciated now that lockdowns did very little benefit, if anything, and actually caused a lot of pain and misery and indeed death and illness through that process. So that's a bad strategy. It should never, ever happen again, in my opinion. All he did was highlight that at the time. Lots of people, as I said to him, lots of people are wise after the event. You were wise in the event and you suffered for it.
Well, the COVID narrative is really falling apart now. When do you think there'll be political fallout over all this?
Well, that's a very interesting question. There's no appetite, is there, at the political level even to debate this? And I sort of get that. You know, it was a horrible period. We are where we are. Let's move on. But at some point, we have to actually face these issues. Why did we move into this heavy Chinese-style lock everybody down policy so quickly, and why didn't we get out of it? What were the mistakes that were made? And because from lockdowns follows everything else. It follows the fact you've got to compensate people for losing their jobs temporarily, for businesses put out of business. That's where the big dollars go, Fred. That's why you and I will be paying this off for the rest of our lives, and then our children will be paying it off after that. And
Indeed.
It was the lockdown policy which was at the root of that. At some point we've got to say, was this the best way to do it?
Well, I'd argue it was always known that it wasn't, and we need more than a royal commission. In some instances, I think we need criminal trials. But just quickly before you go, Nick, your good friend and mine, Tony Abbott, didn't get an invitation to the Queen's funeral from Anthony Albanese. Albo did take 10 other ordinary Australians who I'm sure are very excited and worthy guests. But Tony is one of the staunchest monarchists in Australia. Don't you think it's a bit ungenerous of Albo not to take Tony along?
Well, this is not going to stand up for Albo because I have some inside information on this, Fred. In the end, it was the Queen's decision. She said she didn't want the place packed with VIPs. She wanted ordinary people and gave firm instruction that would be the case. I don't want to give secrets away, but Anthony Albanese behaved towards Tony Abbott with utmost decency and respect. And I believe, Tony, you can ring him in local to speak for himself. I think he understands why this is. I understand why it is. He would have loved to have been there, of course. I would have loved to have been one of the 10 Australians chosen. It wasn't to be. But I think we've got to see those 10 who were chosen as representatives of all. And it was, in the end, it was Her Majesty's decision, and we respect that.